you to think for a moment about what this night means. It was pointed out to me this week by a friend who still lives in England that tonight is the 100th anniversary of the Christmas truce. It began with some soldiers on the Western Front during World War I. And these soldiers, British soldiers from a regiment from Bedfordshire, said about midnight they began to see little flickers of light from the German lines. And having been through heavy fighting recently, they thought maybe this is one more midnight attack. And nothing came. No shooting. Just a few more lights. And just at midnight, they began to hear a familiar tune. I'm sure some of you know where this story is going. Perhaps you've told it to others yourself. But what the tune they heard, the words that they heard, were Still Nacht, Silent Night. And soon the British soldiers began to sing the English version to the same tune, and both sides began to chorus each other. This was at a place called the Somme in western or in northern France, where already 1 million casualties had been recorded by both sides. Actually, 1 million deaths. I have no idea how many were wounded. During the course of the night, all along that sector of the front, soldiers began to leave the trenches and cautiously find their way past the frozen bodies and the craters and the wire. And they found their way to no man's land, where their adversaries, who earlier that day had tried to kill them as they were trying to kill, they began to share a little bit of chocolate from one side, a little bit of chewing gum from another, a little bit of brandy that had been smuggled into a trench, a little bit of laughter. The next day, on Christmas Day, became known as the football match of the century. Soccer. This was not an official truce. This was people just like us, just like your sons, your grandsons, your nephews, your uncles, people just like your neighbors, who for that brief moment saw in their neighbor a glimmer of light, saw in their neighbor the very image of God. We all know that the war continued for 4 more terrible years. By the time we entered the war, our nation entered the war, a whole generation of European men had been lost. What a waste. What a terrible waste. When we think about this night, we think that we have it all figured out. By now, if it hasn't been bought, wrapped, and hidden, it's not going to be. By now, if you haven't invited, shopped, called, written, hung, etc., 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 it's not going to get done. And you know what? That's okay. Because a long time ago, in a land far, far away, on a night just like any other, in a small village in a far-off corner of the empire, the light shone brightly. And in that moment, a group of people, a couple, some shepherds, and maybe some others, decided that despite everything that the world had tried to do, despite all the reasons for them to have given up hope, they saw a glimmer of light in the dark world. They saw the very image of God, and they had hope. You see, when we read a passage like this and these other readings that you heard tonight, these are just glimpses into a truth that supersedes and is far beyond anything that all of us put together could accomplish. I found out this morning that one of the oldest people in this country had just died. She was 114. And that alone should be remarkable. You know, I'm hoping to make it to 60. I know some of you are saying, kid. What got my attention on this in this article, and it's been picked up by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and others, was that on her 113th birthday, she decided that it was time to sign up for Facebook. And so there's a picture of her with her trusty Kindle, or some other tablet kind of device, sitting there, typing away. And the problem was, when she tried to enter her birthday, the software didn't believe her. No one could be born before 1905. The world didn't exist before then. So she had a relative pick up the old-fashioned pen and paper. I know some of you know what that is. And they wrote one sentence: "I'm still here." On her 114th birthday, the founder of Facebook sent her 114 roses. Now, any of those slices of that story are pretty remarkable. One, a billionaire decides to send an old woman flowers. Okay, that's pretty remarkable. The fact that anyone lives to be 114 is itself pretty remarkable. But she said in an interview, "There are still things I don't know. There are still things I want to learn." Her son, in an interview, said she was alert in her right mind up until the moment she slipped away. But what a way to go, he said. The reason I'm telling you that story tonight, with all the high connotations that this evening calls for, I mean, all the ritual and all the lofty words and music, is because in this crazy, chaotic world, with everything else going on, there are stories like that that are worth telling. Maybe you know of other stories. Maybe tomorrow or tonight you'll say, hey, do you remember when Aunt so-and-so was caught streaking? Or do you remember when Grandma got caught behind the church with a cigar? No, don't cough, Judy. You see, the world is filled with reasons why we should give up. You don't have to look far or very hard to find reasons for despair. Every day there's a story of who kills who. Every day there's another illness to be afraid of. Every day there's another famine or another hurricane or tornado. There are so many reasons to give up. But there's one reason to go on. A long time ago, in a land far, far away, a young woman gave birth to a child. Her firstborn, a male. There was every reason for her to despair. She was poor. She was in a forgotten corner of the empire. Her people on her land were occupied and oppressed. And yet, in the darkness, in that deep corner of a cattle shed, she found hope. And because on that night, this young woman and her husband said yes, despite the worst that the empire, despite the worst that people could do, God had still found a way to say yes. It is essential as we go through this night to remember that the sun will rise, God willing. And tomorrow we will see a new day. But if the world ends tonight, the darkness will not dispel the light.
Amen.
You see, all of this, the music, the flowers, the banner, everything, is a reminder that in life there is hope. And as long as one child squirms in the night, we have hope. As long as one of us is finding something to scratch or a tune that we can't get out of our head, or we see something that reminds us of, it's pretty good. It's not to say that every day is going to be a walk in the park and we're never going to have bad experiences. But just as in that scene so many years ago, when the author found a broken mirror and somehow found a way to reveal God's light in the darkest corners of his world, so too, when you go out into the night, you are the mirror by which somebody else will see the dark corners of their life. You are the glimpse of God in the dark world. You're the hope that this generation has been looking for. Now, before you go thinking, well, I'm feeling pretty good about myself then. Remember that we are only reflecting the light that is within us. The light put there by God. And because of God, there is hope. Amen.
Amen.
A bit of housekeeping. Please remember that as the light is passed, to tilt the unlit candle and not the lit one. And remember, the shields are made of paper. They are not foolproof. So don't go waving your candle around and set your little brother on fire. I invite you to join with me in the sharing of the light. On the eve of Christmas. On the eve of Christmas.
The earth will flourish.
On the eve of Christmas.
War will be gone.
On the eve of Christmas.
Love will be born.
When we offer a glass of water to a thirsty person.
It is Christmas.
When we clothe a naked person with a gown of love.
It is Christmas.
When we wipe the tears from weeping eyes.
It is Christmas.
When the spirit of revenge dies in me.
It is Christmas.
When in my heart I no longer want to stay apart.
It is Christmas.
When I am buried in the being of God.
It is Christmas.
Let us sing together. There's a song in the air. And remain seated.